many times have I told you not to view yourself on television?
But Mom!
One of our donkeys in the story is quite lazy. And this, makes for a very good story.
It is exactly 1 o'clock. We are coming to you live from the Broadcasting House right here in Nairobi. KBC Lunchtime News begins right now as we seek to find out what has been happening in Kenya and beyond borders on this 13th day of January, the year 2021. A lot is making the news today. The twists and turns on the industrial action by the healthcare workers has elevated new information. The Council of Governors has finally broken its silence, and we'll be telling you more about what they had to say today with regards to the industrial action, especially by the clinical officers. Now, we want to focus on other matters, but remember, you can also be part of this program at KBC Channel 1 is where we're streaming this live for you. My name is Safina Cheng Oma, and our sign language interpreter is Simon Karotha. We begin straight away with matters politics. A section of Wiper Party lawmakers has thrown its weight behind the ongoing push for a rotational presidency led by Mavoko MP Patrick Makau and Machakos woman representative Joyce Kamene. The leaders have called on the Kamba community to unite behind Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka ahead of the 2022 presidential contest.
The recent calls for rotational presidency continues to dominate political discussions in the country. Wiper Party MPs Patrick Makau and Joyce Kamene have termed the proposal as a noble idea.
Tunajua kuna nchi kama Nigeria, vita ilikuja juu ya kabila mbili kuongoza.
Ndio.
Na amani ilikuja wakati ule kabila zote zilianza kwenda round mzunguko.
Ndio.
Pia tunaambia watu wa Tangatanga, nataka tuwaambie rais alisema Kenya ni ya kabila yote 43. Kwa hivyo achaneni na ukabila. Na sisi tunamuunga Rais Muigai mkono, tuunganishe Kenya, tukue na amani, tuache vita na vitina, na tunasonga mbele.
Na sisi tunaendelea kuunga hiyo statement mkono, kwa sababu kwa kweli kabila mbili ndio zimekuwa zikitawala Kenya, na kuavoid animosity within us na within the tribes.
Speaking at Mutitoni Assistant County Commissioner's grounds during distribution exercise for avocado seedlings to women groups, the lawmakers called on the Kamba community to firmly support the Building Bridges initiative.
All right, now we are going to be shifting gears from matters politics to the ongoing war against COVID-19. The Kenya Medical Research Institute now says there is still no evidence of any new COVID-19 variant in Kenya. KEMRI, however, says the research is ongoing to assess the situation between January and the end of February 2021 across multiple sites in Kenya. However, there is concern that given the widespread global transmission of this lineage, there is significant risk of its eventual introduction to the country.
Reports of a new COVID-19 variant in the United Kingdom put the world on high alert, with stricter measures being imposed, including ban on travel to and from the affected countries. The Kenya Medical Research Institute, KEMRI, says that as at October, none of the lineages that are described as variants of concern have been reported in Kenya. These, KEMRI says, includes 20 samples collected from October, which coincide with the start of the second wave. KEMRI says it would need more sequencing covering the period October 2020 to January 2021 to conclude on the local status of these variants. However, given the widespread global transmission of this lineage, there is a significant risk of its eventual spread to Kenya. KEMRI says it proposes surveillance of 50 samples each week from across the various testing laboratories and ports of entry to monitor for new variants and will report findings on a monthly basis. Meanwhile, youth in the Coast region are being encouraged to seek medical treatment and counseling for HIV and AIDS during the COVID-19 pandemic. Authorities and charity groups say that since the pandemic struck, cases of missed appointments have been on the rise, with others not adhering to their medication.
Kuna mambo na kupimwa COVID, kuna nini hizo, so wanaogopa, hawezi kufika hapa rahisi. So inakuwa challenge, tunapata vijana wengi wanapotea, wanakaa huko tu kwa mabezi, hawezi kuja tena kwa hii facility, wanakitu kwa mabezi, kazi ni kukula mkukaa, kushauriana mambo yenye yasaidia. So hao wanaogopa, kuna ile fear wako nao ndani yao. Sema ukijapimwa pale upate temperature iko juu, hiyo direct wewe ni corona. So kuna ile wanaogopa sasa kufika hapa kabisa.
Nancy Okwari, Channel 1 News.
Now, the Wiper Democratic Movement Kenya has unveiled Agnes Kavindu as its candidate for the Machakos senatorial by-election. Kavindu, the ex-wife of former Machakos Senator Johnston Muthama, joins a list of candidates who have expressed interest in the seat, which fell vacant following the death of Senator Boniface Kabaka. The Wiper Party has, in the meantime, nominated Sebastian Muli Munguti for MCA in Kitisi Kithuki Ward in Makueni County.
A member of Senate Machakos County, and the candidate's name will appear in the March 18, 2021 by-election ballot. The certificate is signed by Agatha Solite, Chairperson NEP.
And moving on, a section of elders from Garissa County has expressed concern over political intrigues in federal government of Somalia ahead of the general election slated for the 8th of February. The elders are calling for concerted efforts in mending diplomatic differences between Kenya and Somalia for the sake of the region's political stability.
In December 2020, Kenya was given 7 days to withdraw its diplomats from Somalia amid growing diplomatic tensions between Nairobi and Mogadishu. The federal government of Somalia stated it had cut its diplomatic ties with Kenya, accusing Nairobi of meddling in its internal affairs. A section of elders from Garissa has raised concern over the ongoing political developments in Somalia ahead of the general election slated for 8th February. The elders say there is need for Kenya and Somalia to foster favorable diplomatic engagements to help beef up security and ensure political stability in the Horn of Africa.
Nataka ni wasihi watu wale wanazungumza hiyo maneno wawache hiyo propaganda. Kenya haijakuwa mpaka na Somalia jana. Tangu nchi mbili kuweko, Kenya ilikuwa na jirani. Tunataka tukae amani, tunataka tukae kama wadugu, tunataka tuwe na ujirani. Tunataka propaganda licha ya hii serikali ya Kenya ikomeshwe.
Now on to matters health, we take you to Naivasha. The Naivasha Level 4 hospital is expected to be completed by April, 2 months ahead of the expected date. The hospital's management says works were in the final stages that will improve access to healthcare services and ease congestion at the health facility. The hospital's outpatient wing is expected to be constructed at a cost of 300 million shillings and will improve service delivery at the current overstretched facility.
For HDU, and ICU facility that most likely will be completed by April. That has been contracted through something we call FIF, Facility Improvement Funds, and has come in handy in supporting our facility. We have our OPD, an ultra-modern building that is coming up under the partnership of the county government and Kengen. Plenty of people from Nyandarua County, Kiambu County, Kajiado, and also Narok. So this partnership is going across county borders.
Now, on to more news. Construction has begun on the Meru Town, Kadheri, Mwandantu and Coca-Cola Road as the government now moves to ensure the ease of movement in the region. Infrastructure Principal Secretary Professor Mwangi Maringa says the project is expected to be complete in 12 months, with more roads set to be constructed in the wider Meru region in a bid to improve the transport sector in the area.
Infrastructure Principal Secretary Professor Mwangi Maringa says the road has been given a new lease of life following the replacement of contractors.
Though it was started in 2017, has been very problematic. We have a contractor who seemed to have struggled in terms of capacity. Recognize his challenges in terms of delivery, and recently, therefore, he did sign a contract with a new contractor with a much bigger capacity for work delivery.
Maringa said the project is expected to ease movement in the region as well as speed up the transportation of agricultural commodities to markets in the region.
We expect him in the next 12 months to be able to run through 20 kilometers of this road. And then thereafter, he'll be able to catch up with the rest of the contract. More road links. There is a Coca-Cola, Mpuri, Kidhaku, Kadheri link, which is where we are now. That is 11.5 kilometers. So far, 8 kilometers of this has been done, and is one that is a bit dilapidated. Then, thereafter, you have the Keverone Kariene, that is 9.8 kilometers, and then Kariene to Kaguma, and that is 8.8 kilometers, and finally Kaguma to Gyaki.
The PS urged the new contractor to give priority to area residents as they seek labor in the construction of the road.
Work is local, so the employees, as much as possible, must stay.
Reporting for Channel 1 News, I'm Jackie Wambiru.
That report by Jackie Wambiru takes us to our first break right here on KBC Lunchtime News. Don't go too far. We are coming back with much more.
Muone Faisal ndio huyu aliwekelea bidi ya TV na ndio hii anaenda nayo. Faisal, hebu tuambie ni vipi uliwekelea bidi?
Nilienda kwenye website ya QuickBid. Nikatizama nikachagua kuwekelea kwenye TV. Sasa niliwekelea mara 3. Nikaja kwa mshindi, nikakutana bidi yenye imenifanya kwa niko mshindi ilikuwa ni 168. Sasa leo nimekaitwa nikaja nichukue TV yangu.
Haya Faisal, mali yako tukusaidie. Asante.
Jiunga na QuickBid ni rahisi. Enda kwenye M-Pesa, bonyeza paybill kisha weka business number 4032353. Kwenye account weka kodi ya bidhaa unayotaka na bidi yako ya chini zaidi. Kwa mfano TV 16, kisha weka shilingi 20 tu kama idadi yako. Weka bidi yako pia kwenye www.quickbid.co.ke. Kumbuka, bidi ya chini zaidi ya kipekee ndio ununua. QuickBid, bidhaa bora kwa bei ya chini.
Bayern Munich hopes to get past Holstein Kiel on Wednesday the 13th of January in their second round matchup of the DFB Cup as they seek to defend their title.
Alaba! Brilliant free kick from the Austrian!
It's another must-watch match you cannot afford to miss on Wednesday the 13th of January from 10:45 p.m. live and exclusive on KBC Channel 1.
Unichukulie kwa mfano ndani ya matatu Unajua? Saturday yaandikangu hivyo.
Ni nini wewe?
Yaani mtu mzima na miaka zake hizo miaka zote. Mtu ajui kujua kuandika note. Note tu peke yake. Kusoma kweli inasaidia.
Kijana, nini nakusumbua na mimi?
Nauliza ni ungwana.
Don't you dare insult me, okay?
Mama Angel.
Don't you dare.
me.
Oh, please.
Let the dead bury.
They are dead, right?
You're running around.
Hizo viatu zake zinanuka. Songea huko. Haya. Kwani umepita? Ni nini wewe? Yaani wataka kumpiga. Huwezi mpiga, mpige nini?
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
Say it aloud. Hail Kishak. Hail the motherland. I, the grandson of the great Emperor Chandragupta, Emperor Bindusar's and Lady Dharma's son Ashok Maurya. I'm not supporting Ashok. Not at all. Great Chief Kichak, if you come to know about my truth, then you will understand what's the truth in my words.
Welcome back and thank you so much for staying with us. We're now shifting gears onto matters health. The Council of Governors maintained they were not consulted on the return to work formula signed between the Ministry of Health and the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers on the 1st of January. Chair of the Council of Governors, Wycliffe Oparanya, says although the governors are not opposed to some of the provisions of the agreement, they were concerned on the budgetary implications to implement the agreement. At the same time, they faulted healthcare workers for violating the law by failing to resume work despite court orders, adding those who abscond duty will be blacklisted from future employment.
The ping-pong game between the governors and healthcare workers continued Wednesday, with the governors now threatening disciplinary action against healthcare workers who failed to resume to work as per the law.
Any health worker who absconds from duty will be dealt with in accordance with the law. No worker should expect to walk out of their jobs and then walk back when they do so wish. The county governments are not a revolving door.
The Council of Governors Chair Wycliffe Oparanya says healthcare workers engaging in illegal industry actions will be blacklisted and their names circulated to prevent them from accessing job opportunities.
We are monitoring and shall circulate the names of the employees who have been terminated on account of indiscipline in order for the workers not to be considered for subsequent employment by other counties.
At the same time, he maintained the governors were not involved in the agreement signed between clinical officers and the Ministry of Health this year. He also extended an olive branch to the union, saying they were not opposed to talks to find a tangible solution to the stalemate.
We are, however, not opposed to a social dialogue that will help resolve the issues and put to an end to the perennial strikes by the health workers. This has negative impact on service delivery.
But the demands of the two unions is huge, and we cannot realize their demands.
The COG pointed out COVID-19 has affected all professions, and should other professionals take the direction the healthcare workers have chosen, the economy will ground to a halt. This comes as the healthcare workers have accused the governors of frustrating their agreement with the government in their failure to sign the negotiated return to work formula. Yusufar, Channel 1 News.
And we're now going to be crossing over to the Jubilee Party headquarters in Pangani. The party is currently making a statement. Let's listen in to Amos Kimunya, the majority leader, who is currently speaking.
It will all be positive in support of the party leader
that as you make the decision, we'll make a decision from a point of knowledge, rather than what is currently now, when people are making decisions when they have not quite internalized what exactly is contained within the BPI. And hence, I just want to assure Kenyans, contrary to what you're hearing, there's a lot of work going on, and by the time we get to Parliament, Kenyans will be talking a very different thing about BBI and the benefits for Kenya in terms of the bigger picture, the 9-point agenda, the unification of the country, the cessation of hostilities around the election area, and the shared prosperity across the entire country. There's so much more, and we just want to tell you, and we'll be giving you more briefs on that, and if there's any question on that, I'll be happy to respond.
Okay, so now we invite you to ask a couple of questions. As the questions come, I just want to inform you that we may give it to any one of the leadership to answer after our own consultations. Thank you very much. Okay, you start by identifying yourself and the media house you represent, then we can proceed. Yeah? Okay, I'll go this way, so let's start from you.
Loud.
Loud.
All right, that is just a statement by the Jubilee Party leadership. We've had there the majority leader Amos Kimunya, who spoke earlier, talking about matters BBI. A lot has emanated from this conversation in the past few days. Of course, it's a story we're still compiling for you, and we'll be giving you more details as the day progresses. Now, we want to shift gears and focus on matters education. The government is expressing optimism it would achieve 100% turnout in schools as they launched a door-to-door campaign to trace learners who are yet to resume learning in Isiolo. Data in Isiolo County suggests an impressive 91% turnout in primary schools. In Kilifi, 84.2% of primary school learners have reported back to school as the campaign to have all students report back to school intensifies.
Speaking during an inspection tour of the 3 schools in Isiolo County, the team of government officials reported only 4,000 children were yet to report back to school across the vast county. Public Service Principal Secretary Mary Kimoni and the PS in charge of Public Works and Infrastructure, Paul Maringa, said they had launched a door-to-door campaign to trace the learners.
The important thing about this is that the names of the students are known, the chiefs of the areas are known, and they're actually going door to door looking for these students. We have a number who are unwell, not COVID, just students. You know, the normal, somebody broke a leg, they can't come back to school. Others is just simple distance because of where they have to come to. And I'm told even under normal circumstances, this would be the situation, even when in other places.
In Kilifi County, Principal Secretary for Regional Development Dr. Margaret Owawuda Mwakima led a team of government officials and toured primary schools and secondary schools in Kilifi, Lamu and Tana River counties.
We also wish to see how the physically challenged are coping with the current dispensation. And not only the pupils and the students, but also how are the teachers relating and coping, because we do not want to leave any of our children behind.
Kilifi North Deputy County Commissioner Josephat Mutisia said 84.2% of learners in public primary schools had reported back to school, while 74.1% of students in public secondary schools had reported back.
There is a big challenge, just like in the rest of the country, on social distancing. Most of these public schools are overwhelmed by space because there are several private institutions that closed down, and those pupils have sought places in public schools. So we are having that challenge. Then on the masks, enforcement of wearing the masks to the pupils is also a big challenge. Some of them are putting them in the pockets, and just when they leave the classroom, wanatoa. So, but we are still working to see how we can work together with the teachers to see how we can enforce the same in schools.
In Mandera County, Cooperative Principal Secretary Alia Ismail Noor said lack of teachers, insufficient provision of water as well as inadequate infrastructure are the main challenges facing schools in Mandera.
Number of schools that are operating below the staff complement or establishment that has been approved. And this one is a problem, I'm sure, which is very well known to the Ministry of Education, and government is doing its best to resolve that issue.
Elsewhere, the government is in the final stages of acquiring a 9-acre piece of land in Kasarani that will be used to build a new primary school in order to decongest the overstretched Mwiki Primary School. PS Energy Engineer Joseph Njoroge says the land is located opposite a river queue which will also serve pupils who cross over from Kasarani to Mwiki Primary.
Now listen to this unfortunate turn of events. A 15-year-old girl from Andugosi area in Teso South constituency has allegedly committed suicide. The minor, who was found hanging from a rope, is alleged to have stolen 20 shillings from her parents. At the same time, a middle-aged man allegedly committed suicide by throwing himself in River Sio in Nasewa village.
The mother to the deceased minor, Evelyn Nakunu, says her daughter Gertrude Otinot, a Class 8 pupil, went missing 2 days ago. She is reported to have run away from home fearing punishment for taking 20 shillings without permission, which was found hidden in her school bag.
Sasa babaka akapigiwa simu na mtu ati huyo mtoto amepatikana Kadungosi pale, ati amelala tu kwa kibanda ingine hapo. Ndiye akatoka kwenda harakati za kumtafuta. Vile alikuwa anapitia ile njia ya Ochunga hiyo, ni kama alimuona. Akajaribu, akarudi nyuma, akaanza kutembea tena kirudi nyuma, pole pole tena anaangalia nyuma. Sasa akajaribu kufuatilia, yeye anatembea nyuma, yeye mbele, akaanza mbio. Huyo pia akajaribu kukimbia, akamlemea. Hivyo tu huyu kurudi ati nimekimbizana na yeye amenipotelea. Sasa nataka nirudie kwa tena hii route ya huku. Sasa ndio hii kidogo tunapigiwa simu ati amejinyonga.
The family is still in shock as investigations into the incident begins. Separately, police have launched investigations into the death of a middle-aged man who is reported to have died by his own hand. The man is reported to have died through drowning after allegedly throwing himself into River Sio. His family is yet to understand the reasons behind his action.
A really sad ending to those two lives there. Now, let me take you to the coastal region. A semi-trailer truck has lost control and plunged into the Indian Ocean as it attempted to board the MV Kilindini ferry. Kenya Ferry Services Managing Director Bakari Goa said the truck got stuck at the pause of the ferry before plunging into the ocean, though no injuries or deaths were reported. 2 days ago, a similar incident occurred when a tour bus plunged into the ocean.
The Kenya Ferry Services is once again in the news 2 days after a bus plunged into the ocean at the Likoni Channel. At 14:15 a.m., the Kenya Ferry Services got an alert that a semi-trailer carrying tiles from Tanzania had plunged into the ocean. According to Hassan Shaban, the front tires of his truck got stuck at the ramp and couldn't move.
Nimeteremka vizuri hapa na gari taratibu, nimekuja na gari taratibu mpaka nafika pale kwenye feri. Ikaingia gari zile tairi za mbele, zikaingia pale kwenye ile bati la feri, zikaingia zile tairi. Kwa baada kuingia zile tairi, nikasikia hiyo umekita, kama ile gari imekwama, ni gari kenda ikakita pale kwenye feri lakini baada ya pale kukita, zile tairi zilikuwa zimepanda pale juu kwenye feri. Ikabidi nijaribu kurudi nyuma, ikashindikana. Kwenda mbele ikashindikana, yani ina maana ilikuwa imekwama pale.
Shaban says he stepped out of the truck to alert the coxswain before his truck slid and plunged into the ocean.
Kwa hiyo pale nikabidi niteremke kuchungulia chini, gari imekwama, ile show pale imekita. Nikaenda kwa dereva wa feri, nikamwambia mzee, gari imekwama pale, umesikia ule mlio uliolia? Akasema nimesikia. Baada hapo tunaona feri inatolewa, inasogea. Kwa kila ile feri kwa ikienda gari ikawa zile tairi ziko pale juu, ikawa inashindwa kujizuia, ikawa inasogea. Kila feri ikisogea nayo inasogea.
The Kenya Ferry Services says the accident was caused by low tides and not the slippery ramp as earlier reported.
Magari makubwa kama haya yanavukishwa wakati maji yako juu kabisa, tide ikiwa very high. Wakati huo hakuna surface ya ramp ambayo iko wet, maana maji yako juu. Kwa hivyo masuala ya utelezi hayaingiliani hapo. Utelezi utaingiliana tu labda wakati kumenyesha, na pia siku ya leo hatukuwa na mvua. Kwa hivyo hiyo pia tunataka kuiondolea kama labda ni sababu ambayo inaweza kuchangia kwa hili gari kuweza kuingia ndani ya maji.
Goa urged ferry users to familiarize themselves more with using the Liwatoni footbridge to help curb accidents along the channel. For Channel 1 Lunchtime News from Mombasa County, I am Anburu.
All right, allow us to take another break right here on KBC Lunchtime News. Please continue interacting with us online at KBC Channel 1 and also talk to me directly at Safin_Acheng on Twitter, on Facebook, Safin Acheng. We are taking that break now.
Faisal ndio huyu aliwekelea bid ya TV na ndio hii anaenda nayo. Faisal, hebu tuambie ni vipi uliwekelea bid?
Nilienda kwenye website ya QuickBid. Nikatizama nikachagua kuwekelea kwenye TV. Sasa niliwekelea mara 3. Nikaja kwa mshindi, nikakutana bid yenye imenifanya kwa niko mshindi ilikuwa ni 168. Sasa leo nimekaitwa nikaja nichukue TV yangu.
Haya Faisal, mali yako tukusaidie. Asante.
Jiunga na QuickBid ni rahisi. Enda kwenye M-Pesa, bonyeza paybill kisha weka business number 4032353. Kwenye account weka kodi ya bidhaa unayotaka na bid yako ya chini zaidi. Kwa mfano TV 16. Kisha weka shilingi 20 tu kama idadi yako. Weka bid yako pia kwenye www.quickbid.co.ke. Kumbuka, bid ya chini zaidi ya kipekee ndio hununua. QuickBid, bidhaa bora kwa bei ya chini.
Now we've shifted gears to matters business. Tomato farmers in Rombo, Kajiado South constituency are calling on the government to reduce taxes on agrochemical products to make fertilizer available and crack the whip on those selling uncertified fertilizers and seeds. The farmers say that without these safeguards, the high cost of inputs will see them incur massive losses.
The tomato fruit in Rombo, Kajiado South constituency is a major income earner for farmers. In the past, a 100-kilogram box of tomatoes would fetch more than 8,000 Kenyan shillings. However, this is in sharp contrast to the current situation.
Na inatukalia sana kwa maana saa zingine unapata umengangana na shamba, umengangana alafu ikafika mahali ukaishiwa na pesa. Kuishiwa na pesa, sasa itabidi mdudu anakula.
The farmers have also stemmed their compounded woes to unscrupulous businessmen and unfair trade practices as compared to their competition across the border in Tanzania.
Unakuta broker anaita tajiri kutoka Nairobi. Anamwambia njoo nimeona nyanya za bei rahisi. Kwa mkulima fulani amelemewa na mzigo wake, kwa hivyo inatakikana tumnunulie bei. Sasa unakuta broker ndiye mtu anatoa nini? Anatoa bei na ile yale bado hamjawasiliana.
So, kwa upande wa soko Kenya unapata tunaumia sana. Maana unapata Kenya nyanya inawekwa sanduku inawekwa sanduku kubwa sana, na unapata sasa kuna history kama hizi gari kutoka Tanzania. Hizo gari kutoka Tanzania ndio zinaokoa sasa wakulima wa huku, kwa maana unapata wao watupi nyanya sana.
They are now calling on both levels of government to come up with regulation of tomato packaging to avert exploitation of farmers.
Sasa tunaomba kama government inaweza toa ile VAT iliwekwa kwa mambo ya agrochemicals, Tunaomba kama watatoa itatusaidia sana wakulima wadogo.
Loitoktok is renowned for its farming activities, and it is a Kajiado food basket owing to the plenty supply of fresh water from Mount Kilimanjaro utilized in farming activities. Alanauko, Channel 1 Business.
Now, stakeholders in the hospitality industry are hoping for a sector comeback in the meetings, incentives, conferences and exhibitions tourism niche, as it remains the only alternative after a decline in foreign tourist arrivals due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The optimism is pegged on increased meeting bookings by local and regional corporates for 2021.
The festive season gave the tourism sector a much-needed boost after experiencing a long dry spell. However, in the first 2 weeks of 2021, the sector has recorded a decline in business attributed to the scarcity of foreign arrivals owing to prolonged restrictions resulting from COVID-19 pandemic and other competing priorities locally.
This year has started off very positively, and we are optimistic that the MICE industry should do extremely well this year if we as a country and as Kenya can really try to position ourselves well within the MICE business using the Kenya National Convention Bureau.
But the hospitality industry players are hopeful that the MICE segment will recover after the sharp decline experienced in 2020 and the first 2 weeks of this year.
The inquiries that have been received are from local and regional companies mostly. However, surprisingly, a small percentage has come in from the international corporates, which was a real big surprise.
According to the chairman of the Kenyan Coast Working Group, Hasnain Nurani, before the outbreak of COVID-19 virus and the subsequent introduction of travel restrictions and social distancing guidelines, the MICE segment in Kenya presented a promising growth avenue for the industry seeking to diversify tourism offerings. Regina Manyara reporting for Channel 1 Business.
And telco giant Safaricom has donated 17 million shillings towards the protection of the last 15 endangered roan antelopes in Kenya. The decline of the roan antelope population is attributed to poaching for meat and cultural reasons, drought, disease, conversion of their natural habitat to cropland and settlement schemes, and fire outbreaks. Details of this and more stories from the corporate scene in the Corporate Roundup coming up next.
Currently, the endangered antelopes are refined in Ruma National Park in Homa Bay County. The park neighbors a human settlement where residents practice mixed farming with fires and predation by hyenas and leopards, aggravating the human-wildlife conflict, posing a serious threat to the 15 remaining antelope population, which fell from 300 in 1980. In a bid to remedy this, the M-Pesa Foundation has partnered with the Kenya Wildlife Service, the Northern Rangeland Trust and Back to Africa to protect the remaining roan antelopes in Kenya. The decline of the roan antelope population is attributed to poaching for meat and cultural reasons, drought, disease, conversion of their natural habitat to cropland and settlement schemes, and fire outbreaks. Stakeholders have lauded the move, saying the 17 million shillings will go a long way in securing the future of Kenya's 15 remaining roan antelopes only found in Ruma National Park, Homa Bay County, and are a huge tourist attraction for the region.
We determined that a sum of 17 million shillings would be sufficient. Number one, to extend the fence. And we're looking at a further extension of 8.6 kilometers.
We are hoping that by the construction of a fence around this sanctuary and provision of water and all the infrastructure that is necessary, that we can build that population to maybe 50 by maybe 2023.
Elsewhere, UAP Old Mutual has launched a last expense digital cover that will help families manage last respect expenses in the event of the death of a family member. UAP Old Mutual Group MD for the life business, Jerry Motiano, says the digital last expense cover is not only intended to ease the financial burden on families resulting from the passing of a loved one, but also provide convenience on how customers can engage with the product. The last expense cover will include the principal member and 5 members of his or her nuclear family, that is a spouse and 4 children, or 5 children and a single parent. Regina Manyara reporting for Channel 1 Business.
And more business news from the African continent. Unrest over the disputed presidential polls in Central African Republic, coupled with attacks by a coalition of rebels, have forced lorry drivers off the roads, spurring food shortages and price surges in the capital. Details of this and other stories in our Africa Business News Roundup.
Central African Republic's main trading route, the road linking Cameroon to Bangui, is deserted. The disruption of physical trade routes mean hundreds of trucks are stuck waiting to move and translate into shortages for consumers. Prices for basic foodstuffs like onions have tripled in the capital's biggest food market. Air transport is costly but remains the only solution as the disruption continues. The government has, however, pledged to provide army escorts for lorries starting mid this week. Meanwhile, Lukoil, the oil and gas exploration and production company with a focus on Nigeria and West Africa, has appointed Tennyson Securities to act as the company's joint broker alongside SP Angel Corporate Finance LLP with immediate effect. Tennyson Securities is the new home of the primary team that has recently left Mirabad Securities Limited, providing continuity of the company's broking relationships. The news comes days after the oil company announced the appointment of Mr. Michael Ajuku as the chairman. And Egyptian life science startup Nawah Scientific has announced the closing of a second pre-series, a round of $1 million in a mixed equity and debt capital, raising its total funding to $2 million, maintaining its position as the most funded life science venture in MENA, with plans to close a significant series around later in 2021. This announcement comes shortly after Nawah has celebrated inaugurating its new hub of labs, which was described as the biggest private multidisciplinary research hub in Egypt.
And UK firms are doing business in China will face fines if they can't show that their products aren't linked to forced labor in the country's Xinjiang region. According to Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab, all exports will be closely monitored. Details of this and other stories from across the globe in our Business News Roundup.
Action comes from a coalition of civil society organizations and labor unions who want to end abuses against Uyghur people. The coalition said it is almost certain that any brand currently sourcing apparel, textiles, yarn or cotton from the region is profiting from human rights violations, including forced labor. UK firms must show they are trying to avoid using slavery in their supply chains, but there is currently no penalty if they fail to do so. At the same time, a Huawei patent has been brought to light for a system that identifies people who appears to be of Uyghur origin among images of pedestrians. Huawei had previously said none of its technologies was designed to identify ethnic groups. It now plans to alter the patent. Elsewhere, the United States will soon require airline passengers to prove they recently tested negative for COVID-19 before flying to the country. The Centers of Disease Control and Prevention announced on Tuesday the measure, which aims to curb the spread